Okay, today I'm going to go over the new updated version 3 tuning video. I've made one significant change to it, and that is I removed this adjustment screw right here that controlled the return spring tension. I now have a spring in there that has a perfect spring tension that gives a lot of flexibility for adjusting the hit by just using the stroke adjustment instead of a combination of the stroke adjustment and the return spring. Now, just to rehash from the old video, I really like to bend my needles, put a gentle arc on there. I use a nice firm standard hat washer. This is from Icon. I think that the rubber that they use is a little tougher than a lot of the other stuff, but it's also not oversized or undersized or anything that it just gives a good movement for the nipple. If you don't have the right nipple, your machine will spit. Most of the time when people have a problem with their machine spitting, with the Sidewinders at least, it's because of the nipple and it not having the right nipple. Okay. Now, the rubber band on this model, you can use one of these extra thick rubber bands. This is from Kingpin, and just the extra thick ones. But you can also just use a normal, the number 12s, and just wrap like maybe 3 around here. If you need extra tension, you can actually loop the rubber band onto that nut to pull it a little tighter. Now, if your tubes are the proper size, you should be able to just put the rubber band straight across and keep it down as low as possible, as long as it doesn't interfere with the tube when you come down. That's the preferred way. If you have to, if your tubes are longer, then I just recommend going over one of these posts. There's 2 posts. If you just loop over one of them, just to kind of raise this out of the way. The other thing you want to do is when you put it on, just give a nice pull on the rubber band and just alleviate any weird tension that might be pulling one way or the other or extra tight, and that can affect things. Moving the rubber bands up will pull, make the tension less and actually make the machine hit harder, and pulling them down will add more tension and make the machine hit softer. The main adjustment on this is going to be your stroke adjustment knob, which is this knob right here. Turning it up or counterclockwise is going to shorten the stroke and make it hit softer. Turning it down is going to make it hit harder. You also have your impact adjustment screw right here. This is what I call the impact screw, is this screw here that the frame that touches the frame and bottoms everything out and gives it the impact that it needs. When you adjust this, it's going to change the relationship of the cam where it touches. When you push the armature bar down, this cam will touch. Now, the ideal adjustment for this would be to adjust the cam, adjust that screw to where it touches the spring at the 1 o'clock position with the armature bar down. Now, my little rough sketch here, this is the armature bar, here's the flat spring that comes down, and here's the cam. Here's the motor shaft hole right here, and if you touch, when you rotate it, the outer lobe of that cam should be touching that flat spring at the 1 o'clock position. So it should have about 45 degrees of rotation while touching that spring at the bottom of the stroke. And maybe you can see here, if I scoot up, I'm going to rotate this. And you can kind of see that, not very well. This one is more at the 2 o'clock. Now, if you want the stroke to be a lot longer, then you also want to back that impact screw out and it'll actually hit just fine. But for the most versatility, I'm just going to move this. In most cases, adjusting this screw until the armature bar is parallel with the frame is ideal. So just a little bit more. Just make minor adjustments to this. You don't need to turn anything more than about 1/8 of a turn usually. So okay, that's the first step I do when I go to tune these things. I just set that impact and get a nice gentle tug on there. And I like to tune these things at about 5 volts and make it to where it has a nice crisp sound at 5 volts. Now, you can modify your machine and make it to where it's mostly like a long stroke, hard-hitting liner, and at that point, maybe it won't run good at 5 volts. But if you want that range where you can run a 3 or a 14, then getting it there is the best. Okay, this is at 5 volts or 5.1 volts. It's a little rough sounding. So I just turn this stroke adjustment knob to get it smooth. It doesn't stutter or anything, it doesn't skip. Now if there wasn't enough impact, it might kind of stutter and skip a little, and so I'll see it kind of sounds like shit. So I'm just going to turn this impact screw in. If you have too much impact, it's going to get kind of rough. Also, if the machine spits a lot, you might have too much impact. So that's something else to keep in mind. So 5 volts, runs pretty good, nice and crisp. Turned out, that's at 6.5. That's about the fastest I like to run these things now. I mean, here's at 7 volts. I mean, that's pretty much screaming. Now at 6 volts, 6 volts is ideal. That's the best voltage range for these motors. So you want to hit softer, just turn up that impact, the stroke adjustment knob. You want to hit harder, turn it down. If the machine spits, so not only may you adjust this, but sometimes just a slight adjustment on that stroke adjustment knob will stop it from spitting. Just to get it hitting a little bit softer, but then you can turn up the speed to get it to hit harder or run faster. Now, when you have all your settings right, there's little locking set screws on the side. So for the stroke adjustment knob, it's right here. Let's see, I'm trying to use this GoPro thing and do this. So just tighten that up good. And then the impact adjustment screw has a locking set screw right on the side right here. Make sure that's good and snug. If your machine is like speeding up and slowing down, you might have a loose motor. On these ones, I have a screw that holds the motor in place right above the cam, and so make sure that's tight. I did have some of these that the screw wasn't holding it because there wasn't enough meat or enough material in between the frame and the motor, and I've now fixed that with a little shim. So easy fix, but you learn things along the way. Okay, I think that explains just about everything. Hopefully watching this and watching the other videos, you'll have a good understanding of how this machine works. Also, forgot to mention, the direction of the way the cam rotates is going to affect how it hits too. Right now the positive is on the bottom, and that seems to have a more passive approach, and that'll make the motor spin counterclockwise. So your cam will be coming around this way, and if you flip it around, it might run a little slower, but it actually whips the armature bar down harder. And so I actually prefer, with larger lines like 9 and above, I like to flip the clip cord around this way and run. And if you play with that, you'll see that one way will fit your preference a little bit better than the other. And I recommend, once you figure out which way you like it to spin, to just continually do it that way. The less you rotate the direction of the motor, the longer your motor will last. All right, thanks.